It always happens. You kind of, as a YouTuber or whatever, you have to like shoot your videos near a window because that's where the best light is, and then um, that's when all the sound happens. When you need to start shooting your video. Imagine having to do this in like it's like actually in a much busier. I'm lucky I live on this street. Anyways, just here again. This is a quick book review of Nausicaa, Valley of the Wind, and a few other things. This is the manga, the complete edition. This is an incredible book. It's different from the movie. There's a lot more to it, and I think it's what it's a different experience. I think, understandably, and I haven't read it in a long time, so I can't tell you exactly what the differences are and things. I just always love the story and very much the subtlety, and it's about um, common in Miyazaki's stories is this coming to harmony with nature, and after these tragedies or these really smaller, subtler stories in many ways about um, that these are drastic, but they're not, and the combat isn't really about people fighting each other in many ways. It's about trying to get together and kind of shaping things in a better way. Better way. I don't know. I don't know what I'm getting at there. It's definitely a book that just kind of just. I've never really been a big fan of Star Wars and kind of like the West and these bombastic, violent kind of shows and movies and things where they glorify the violence and combat, and I think it's a very chauvinistic, I think, or understanding, and I think in many ways, it's a very juvenile idea, like superheroes as well. That a hero is somebody is a bigger guy who can beat up all the bad guys. When that's not how the world really works. That's not how things really change. It's not just having a bigger guy to beat bigger guys. And I think the voices of the downtrodden are always more important than the people who have the force and the power. And I think those are the stories that always matter to me more than, you know, swords and lasers. And yeah, so those are the kind of stories I love. And I think I've always been afraid or never really wanted to be a reviewer or to really talk about books or things like that blatantly, because you kind of get stuck in that rut. And I've always tried to make my own things, but I just feels like everything I do is wrong, and that's just myself in my own way. And those it's really coming to terms with that. And but I think at the very least I can do is talk about things I love at the most, and things I really like that I think that are important in ways. Like the things I like are rarely ever that popular. They're always second fiddle. They're never the biggest thing in the world. And I think and that's kind of life. There's always going to be the people who kind of like um, who grab onto things that aren't popular and find their own those beauties and things. And I think those are like often, like the nerds or the kind of like super oppressed kind of people who are just always on the sidelines. And eventually, though, you kind of become the mainstream. You kind of get picked up, and if somebody can find a way to make money out of it, they will. I find it's like there's always this counterculture to the culture, and then what happens eventually is that you become the old cast, and what happened after, where I think is like the jocks, and then there's the nerds happen, kind of like to counter that culture, and then now there are the hipsters that kind of counter the nerds, and I don't know what is it. What's happened now? I really don't know. It's just kind of like this idea I've always had, and I thought it was funny. And So like, it's always good to see the other side of the story too as well. It's like PeepoChoo is a American who was infatuated by Japan and went to Japan and became a mangaka, and this is essentially, in all intents and purposes, a manga. It was made in Japan by American, but the story and the curation and it's all of its influences are Japanese. But it's also kind of like this kid's coming terms with the disillusion of what of Japan culture and understanding that, and realistically, that's the truth. Like, it's sad, but like Ghibli's stories are often about the harmony with nature, but it has become also this juggernaut of merchandising and in many ways sells, but you always needed that seed to really tell that story, and I think that's what's going to last more. It's not the objects, but always going to be that story that passes on. And the truth is, no matter who wrote it, that seed is always going to be there. And I think that's what matters, is because you need these stories to guide these things, and you also kind of have to experience the other side as well, that these things are disgusting, and trying to and finding your own place where you land and where you can comfortably be, and in your own way to actually move things in the right direction, and finding your place in there. And I think we all have to become a part of it in some way to really survive. And I think what you do is you try to pass on what means the most to you. And this is another one of those stories I really find I just love, but it's never that popular in in any real terms, is Guardian of the Spirit by Naoki Uehashi. I think a lot of her stories are very similar to kind of the Ursula K. Le Guin, and like writers that I think try to really imagine a more positive and creative world that could be, in existence. And these are the stories I really love. And there's action in this, but it's incredible and it's visceral, and you can really see the action happening. It's not a lot of a lot of action tends to be super cuts and dramatization, but this feels real. It feels like live action in a lot of ways, but far more immersive, because you're really closer to the action than a camera usually can be. And but there's a lot of downtime in the stories, and that's where I find the greatest part of this book is understanding the characters and their place in that world and the world itself. I think that's always been the greatest, what makes these kind of stories so special, I think. So yeah, these are just kind of my reviews, and these things that I really love, and maybe my ideas will change in the fast future, whatever. But those are what happens now. And thanks for watching.